All right, I thought I would talk about um the divine masculine and feminine uh particularity or distinction, difference, and the and a little bit about evolution, progress, and so on. So basically, I woke up and was like, you know, um, when a man eliminates the negatives of a woman's life, she gives him positives. That's the hero slaying the dragon and rescuing the princess, and they live happily ever after, and so on. The knight is not rich, but the woman has title and status and so on. So she gives a world to the knight who destroys that which would destroy her. Um, um, Another thing to think about, and I made some Twitter posts basically on at Tardigans about this whole line of thought, and basically it was just the algorithm leading me along, but like it's like it actually like I've had this happen a lot of times where I'm just following the algorithm and what catches my eye, and like a coherent line of thought and so on comes out of it that's sort of deep, I think, reasonably deep, um, and so on. Now, first off, the first video I saw is the true meaning behind the berserk symbol, the mark of sacrifice, and it's a twin helix of snakes with a essentially wrapping around a stick or pole or staff with a, and the mark of sacrifice in berserk actually has like a little three-pronged crown in the middle stick or line. Um, and this is the rod of Aeschylus, and like the and so on. Um, and basically, um, it's tied as far back as um, the Sumerian god of fertility and death, like farming or something like that. And they were mentioning how there's like a escape the cycle of fate and a spiral going up, so the choices are different and the world goes different based on the patterns or choices you make. But at the same time, there's an emergent pattern that continually goes in a circular fashion from one angle if you're looking top down, let's say, but it's ascending or descending if you look at it sideways. And which path you take, imagine you're walking on the spiral, right? Depending on which way the spiral goes up or down, if you pick one path, you go downwards, and if you pick another path, you climb upwards. Um, and then I checked out a video called Reflections on the Void, Negativity and Difference in the Bible and Contemporary Thinking by Jonathan Pageau. And it was beginning to really activate my almonds a little bit. It's a good video. This is basically like going to be my thoughts as I was listening to it and posting my um, sparks of ideas and so on that came from it to like put it into perspective. And basically, he's talking about the World War II consensus a little bit, the void, negativity, outsideness, ways of relating to negativity and the void, like the Bible versus modern, and postmodernism, and so on. So what I said is, The erosion of this, not that, and that, not this, universalism, liberalism as the universal solvent, when everyone is a super, nobody is. And then I remembered Kill la Kill, and one of the things that struck me as relevant back in the day, even though I didn't understand it, was the ending of Kill la Kill doesn't have like a epic battle with like a finishing move or anything like that. It's literally like, on the one hand, it's coded where the protagonist is red and black, so it's kind of like it's like anarchist or something, and then they become full communists by going gold and red. Um, but the thing is, it struck me that there's the white and blue is like white is the monarchy and blue is conservatism, right? So you can see that in the characters Ryoko and Satsuki. And then the rainbow is Ragyo. And I went back to the clip and posted it on my Twitter, and basically all it is Ryoko going the ultimate evolution of ascendancy into full communism. So it's like a leftist perspective in a way, but at the same time it's kind of contrary. It's like playing both sides in a sense, secretly, where it's like she says humans cannot become clothing. Humans are humans, clothing is clothing. And then Ragyo goes, what is this incomprehensible gibberish? And this kind of I was watching Sargon of Akkad's stream yesterday, and basically he was pointing out that there's like a one of the writers was talking about his interview with David Starkey and himself, Sargon of Akkad, and basically Sargon was just like, you don't understand it, that's fine, but it's not a secret code, you're just dumb. Right? And basically, one of the things about the erosion of boundaries and particularities is it's if you group something up, and or if you're less intelligent, then you need something to be really obvious, and you cannot handle particularity. Like if you have 100 details to deal with within the next hour, you need to be pretty smart basically and have it together and so on. But if you have if you're like the fix everything button, and you just press the button and everything just lines up and does everything, then that's like anyone can do that. So the dumb people like those simple options and so on that don't actually fix the problems, and so on. And this ties into HOMAS levels of thinking and so on, where level 3 is something like, how can I get away with getting what I want, even if it's bad? Or level 3 is if you're level 3 in thinking out of 9, you cannot understand that other people have other opinions than yourself for possible, actual, reasonable reasons. Like an example would be someone goes to your house and is like, "Hey, can I smoke?" And you're like, "No, I don't want to stain the I don't want the smell in my house." And they smoke anyways and say it's chill, and you object. Then in their minds they're basically like, "Oh, he just is angry at me for no reason because he's evil and insane." Now, there's a relationship to this with power and laziness too. Like if you can get other people to solve your problems instead of solving them yourself and working out your mental muscles, I realize that there's specialization in people and so on, and that life is complex, so you can't do everything all the time yourself. But there's an opposite version of this where you let yourself do nothing and have everyone take care of you. And this ties into why society goes into decline when so many people are on disability and so on. Um, yeah, and yeah. So then I also posted Jordan Peterson's The Birth of Marduk, A New Era of Godly Power, and something else. I'm not sure what. The Twitter cut off the link, or X cut off the title. Um, but basically, Marduk is a god that sees all sorts of things. He's got a ton of eyes, and he speaks. And this ties into the Kill la Kill thing, where Ryoko just speaks the truth in a simple manner and redefines the world when everyone's been on the path to trying to fix the problems and solve the problems of a parasitic conspiracy to destroy humanity. Um, um, and Marduk is the god of speaking magic words, so things happen because he speaks. And that's the act of communication which allows for cooperation, basically. Um, Beyond just it happens to work out one time and just continues on. It's like a elevation. It's like an ascendancy into a new level of evolutionary progress and capacity and so on, which is sort of escaping the fate of so many other animals that cannot communicate because they need to be good enough where they just die off on their own. They don't have cooperation or teamwork where if you are on the back foot, someone can save you. Because so much of life is chaotic that we're all on the back foot sometime. Um, so then I was saying the distributist was saying transsexualism is the pinnacle of left liberal and lefty ideology, and then I say how lucky we are it's taken a hit. Breaking the tip of the spear is the hardest first step, and one needs to have been built up or use tools that have been built up, like armor, let's say, or cultivating your ki or chi to have an iron body or something, let's pretend. Forces of chaos incarnate versus process and principle. Then I mentioned also through woman chaos entered the world, which is Eve listening to the serpent, that which is lower and against your good. Because as Jordan Peterson was pointing out, snakes really like to eat primates. So even back to like our first, like even before we were even close to human, snakes have been eating us basically. So that's like a very psychological symbol in a sense. And of course, Eve embracing the snake as not harmful leads to Adam following the woman to please her, which leads to eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and causing problems for both of them. However, the process of perfecting man through woman's service to the ultimate provides for the poison is the cure. So you have Adam and Eve first, and then Mary, mother of Jesus, the new Adam. Feminism to transsexualism versus Gamergate to New Right. Butch lesbian to girl boss, Vivian James to Amelia. Longhouse matriarchy versus Skyfather patriarchy. Then I post Narvan's video. Narvan is a channel on YouTube. Reboot bracket 4K music video end bracket. Because there's a lot of symbolism in Blade Runner about the feminine versus the masculine. sacrifice, um, life giving, the feminine life giving, and the masculine life taking, and so on a little bit, as well as um, the um, the falsity of either or sides, basically. The man is not the woman is not the man, the child is the union of the woman and man. Intersex is an anomaly. Grasping at the union oneself is stunted, futureless perversity. One is already a union, dual natures all the way down, anima animus, one is primary. Particularity is in the man to the chromosomal level XY. Uniformity is in the woman XX. The Y mutates faster. What works, what doesn't, dies. Progress is a man's world, the woman normalizes. And then I say the man's law is death and life. The woman's law is life and new life. Death and rebirth are open to all potentially, but mostly it's men forced by the cosmos into it. So, basically, I'm just hashing out a very packed expression of what these things are. Now, you could argue that the man is life and death and life, rebirth, or something like that, or life, death, rebirth, or something like that, and so on. But we all know that the men like to protect the woman. Oh yeah, there's another quote. There's another post actually. I just went to Jonathan Pajot just now, like um, like 10 minutes ago before I made this video or whatever. I guess 20 minutes ago. And what Jonathan Pajot says is every chud secretly venerates Our Lady, which means Mary, basically, whether they know it or not. And he was responding to a post about a monkey holding a stuffed animal monkey, basically. And Melissa Chen pointed out inside every black-pilled neo-reactionary trad cell and looks-maxing chud are two wolves. One that wants to embrace the penguin and walk away from the world, and one that will put themselves on the line and die for this monkey. They say human women no longer spark their primal protective urge, but deep down inside it's still there. Latent. They are, in fact, romantics. One glimpse of Punch nuzzling his fuzzy toy surrogate, tiny arms in a death grip because this is his only family now, and the floodgates opened, brain chemistry rewired in real time, all tenderness and no irony. So basically, the problem with feminism is that it assumes men don't like to protect women. And the answer is that some men like to abuse women. Now, I don't have any super deep insights into why people like to abuse exactly necessarily. But grasping at the divine. But there's actually no, I do have something that's kind of deep, and it's kind of related to all this in a way, with women trying to be men and men trying to be women, the girl boss and transsexual phenomenon, and so on. I get there's a little bit of women trying to be men, like transsexual, and then there's like the twink or femboy phenomenon as well, but mostly it's one way or the other based on those two types situations: girl boss versus transsexual. Um, and this is another layer to this whole thing, and so on, which is um, limitation is the reason evil can exist. And what I mean by that is, but I'm going to caveat this really, really hard at the end, because it's not quite the way you might think. So there's still distinction even in this statement. And what I mean is, the reason why I say that is because God is perfectly good. He's perfect. He's good. He's all powerful. He would not create entities to torture and so on without giving them something more than what they had before. In the end, somehow, whether after death or in life. And the reason for that is because if you were a selfish bastard, but you had everything you needed, like let's say you only cared about money and you were screwing people over to get money, and then everyone just gave you all the gold in the world, right? You'd just be like hugging your gold. You know. Imagine if Gollum didn't need food but had his precious. You know, he'd just sit in his cave looking at the precious. He wouldn't actually go around like eating babies, which is one of the things he does in the books. So, an evil entity only interacts with other people to get what they want. Limitation. Um, uh, the reason why people are manipulative and power hungry and so on is because, and they abuse other people, is to convince them they have more control over their own lives and so on. This now goes as far as to the argument, as some people say in a way, that rape is about power, not sex. It's kind of both, because sex leads to creation of new life, which like, and then you're a parent, and then you like have control over your kid and you guide them and so on. But you notice how this is a stunted perversion, grasping at thing. And Jesus said, um, said of himself, he's not grasping equality with God. He's emptying himself out. And that's Jesus' approach to this. So you can see how this is all tying together in some way. Now, grasping at the divine, I realize people say they found God and so on, but like, you know, and you're like supposed to follow God, but you're not grasping at God exactly. You're not trying to take God. And that's the other thing about the tree of the fruit of good, of the knowledge of good and evil. There's a long-standing, strong tradition of belief that God was always going to give the fruit, the apple of knowledge of good and evil, to Adam and Eve when they're ready. The problem is that they took it without his permission. And if you look at child sexual abuse, right? Men and women are meant to have sex and so on. But when someone forces that onto a child, it is evil. So it's not the child taking sex, it's the adult giving sex before. I mean, I'm using giving in a very uh, don't think of it as a positive thing. I'm not thinking of it as a positive thing in the sense, but you know what I mean. It's a pushing onto before they're ready. So you can see how there's all sorts of ways to be perverse and destroy good and so on, and how there's kind of like only one real way to be good in the essence and spine and spirit kind of way, the backbone way of being good, and all these little detours and self-destructive offshoots that have no future and are bad and so on. And I think that's what people are getting at when they say they want a normal society, because many people are reasonably normal. It's not that normality has always been the thing as advertised, but there is a real essence to it that has existed. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion thing, right? Like the diversity is basically the perverse offshoots that have no future. Um, Equity dissolves particularity, so you can't tell the difference. And inclusion is first you make the differences that are bad because you're just experimenting. Then you say they're equal to each other, the good and the bad, and then you include the bad into the society that was formerly good, and so on. And that's why DEI is so awful in essence. Um, yeah. Now, there is a certain degree of pridefulness and I am this, not that, like I'm better than you, and so on, that can be bad in some ways. And there's an effort in Christianity to say, um, you don't judge lest you be judged on the same level or by the same standard. And then there's also a concept called horizontal versus vertical righteousness. And compared to God, in vertical righteousness, no one is righteous. So that sort of like is a trick, like a technique of understanding that you have faults. But then there's also horizontal righteousness, which is um, like you're slightly better than someone else compared to like in God's eye. So like you can say I'm not, at least I'm not that bad in a way, but you can recognize you might have like something aligned that is kind of almost as bad or something like that, or a little bad and so on. And the reason why Christianity says if you commit even one sin, you go to hell without Jesus, isn't to lock you onto following a death cult. It's to lock you into this frame of reference of mind where you're not like I'm just the best person in the world. Everyone else sucks. I should be king of the world. You know, even if you're really good, because pride comes before the fall. And I mentioned pride and laziness, or power and laziness. Well, power leads to pride, leads to laziness. And if you're lazy, you don't actually solve problems or something like that. You rely on others and so on. So you see how this all sinks in, hooks in back to the main message and so on. So that's why Christianity. So that's why Jesus is the foundation of Christianity, because he's got all this wisdom and so on. And this is the core structure, I believe, of why Christianity is so powerful and valid and so on. On top of Jordan Peterson's structural arguments and so on. I'm just outlining what I think the details of that structure are, basically, at this point. And using Jonathan Pageau and other people and so on. And you can see how the lack of particularity is one of those things, but we all know that if we could have life easier on some level, we would like to have it that way. But we also know that like easiness kind of means lack of meaning somehow, at least for men. And that ties into the Y chromosome thing and our role in the experimentation of mutations of the Y chromosome, because the Y chromosome mutates faster than the X chromosomes. And why the men have to risk dying, basically, on the genetic level. in order to be worthy of the woman. And again, what works works, and what doesn't work dies off. So it's not that men are naturally progressing all the time. It's that they're taking a gamble or a risk, and they don't actually know whether it'll likely succeed or not necessarily. I mean, it's a genetic thing, even. So the gene doesn't actually know what it's doing. It's just like, oh, I'm going to change this way because of the forces of the environment or something. Um, and you know, we weed out what is strong or weak. We weed out the weak, and then the strong just naturally progresses the species, and then the women catch up basically. So the pressures of sexual selection and natural selection are actually stronger on the man than the woman. But you notice how the um, everyone's selected for a little bit, which is that death and rebirth open to all potentially kind of thing, and so on. And everyone dies. Everyone who lives dies. You know. Um, but there's certain slightly universal aspects, but they're like there's a variation and differentiation of like emphasis or some particular mechanism or something like that. And learning all these things is what makes you an intelligent, wise person, basically. But noticing the threads and patterns and flows of meaning and so on is really important for understanding the whole thing. And that's basically what my existential crisis guide and toolkit's been about, trying to teach the wisdom of these things. And this is like the um, like I've kind of like it's why I haven't been posting many videos lately, because I'm kind of mostly comfortable with my worldview, and I'm just adding finishing touches more or less in a sort of way. And I'm doing it for myself as well as for other people, basically, because like these are lessons that I was totally blind to when I was a man child, and if you don't learn it the easy way, you're going to learn it the hard way, or you're going to die off, or you're going to be involuntary celibate for the rest of your life, and then your genes will die off after you're lonely and miserable. So this is like a toolkit for men to develop, but also like a sort of way of saying like, woman, if your man's paying attention to this stuff, he's on the right track and you can trust him even if he fails once in a while.